The wind screamed across the frozen valley, cutting through the night like broken glass. Under the pale light of 2 moons, an alien woman stumbled barefoot through the snow. Her name was Lyra, and her arms held 2 tiny newborns wrapped in torn cloth. Their cries were weak now, fading under the howling storm. Her legs trembled with every step, her body shaking from the cold. Blood trailed behind her, marking where she had fallen before. She had begged her clan to let her live, to let her daughters live, but they called her cursed. In their ancient belief, twins were a bad omen, a sign of destruction. So they cast her out the moment the babies were born. Lyra pressed the babies close to her chest, trying to give them what little warmth remained in her body. "Shh, stay awake, my stars," she whispered, her voice breaking. But her words were lost in the storm. Her eyes were heavy, her skin turning pale blue. She looked around, but all she saw was endless white and darkness. Far above, a human patrol ship cut through the clouds. The pilot, Ethan Cole, scanned the surface for signs of wreckage. The distress signal had been faint, probably a false alarm. Still, something deep inside told him to check one last area. The scanner beeped softly, picking up faint heat signatures. Ethan frowned. "Could be debris," he muttered. But when he looked closer, he saw something move. He lowered his ship into the storm. The landing gears touched the ground, sending snow flying. The moment the ramp opened, freezing air hit his face like a wall. He wrapped his jacket tighter and stepped out, his flashlight cutting through the swirling white. "Anyone out here?" he called, but only the wind answered. Then faintly he heard it, a small broken cry. A baby's cry. Ethan's heart raced. He ran toward the sound, slipping on the icy ground. When his light hit a small shape in the snow, he froze. A woman, alien, half buried in ice, her arms locked around 2 tiny infants. Their small hands moved weakly, one of them glowing faintly pink through the cloth. Ethan dropped to his knees. Hey, stay with me," he shouted, brushing snow from her face. Her lips were blue, eyes half open. She whispered something in her own language before going silent. Ethan didn't understand the words, but the fear in her eyes was clear. She thought he was another hunter. He quickly took off his thermal coat and wrapped it around her and the babies. "You're safe now," he said softly. "I got you." He carried all 3 of them to his ship, the wind howling harder as if trying to stop him. Inside, he placed the babies under a heat lamp and injected Lyra with a stim shot from his med kit. Her breathing steadied slightly. "Hang in there," he whispered again. "Don't give up." The twins began to cry louder, their voices cutting through the silence. Ethan smiled. "That's it. Keep crying, little ones. That's how we know you're alive." He piloted the ship toward his mountain outpost, a small shelter built for storm rescues. The engines roared as he lifted off, shaking the snow from the wings. But behind the noise, he didn't notice the blinking red light on his console. Something else was on the scanner. Something large, moving fast beneath the storm. Hours later, the ship landed safely near the outpost. Ethan carried the alien woman inside, laying her gently on a bed. Her skin slowly regained color under the heater's glow. He looked down at her face, smooth silver skin, faint markings across her cheeks and long dark lashes that trembled with every breath. "You've been through hell," he murmured. "But you made it." He checked the twins again, both sleeping now, tiny chests rising and falling in rhythm. He smiled faintly, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Outside, the storm was beginning to fade. But in the distance, faint lights moved through the snow, shadows of tall figures carrying weapons that gleamed under the moons. They followed the faint trail of heat his ship had left behind. Inside, Ethan had no idea they were coming. He only looked at the alien woman sleeping beside her children and whispered, "You're safe now." But far away, a metallic growl echoed through the blizzard. The hunters had found her scent, and they were coming. The storm finally died before sunrise, leaving behind a world buried in silence and snow. Ethan Cole stood by the window of his small mountain shelter, watching the endless white stretch into the horizon. Inside, the fire hummed low, warming the cold metal walls. He turned back to the bed where the alien woman lay sleeping, her 2 newborns curled beside her. She was still weak, her breathing shallow, but the color had returned to her cheeks. The twins made small, soft noises in their sleep, their skin glowing faintly under the blanket. Ethan had never seen anything like them before. He knelt beside them, adjusting the thermal pads around their bodies. "You're fighters," he murmured. "Just like your mom." Lyra stirred, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment, confusion filled her gaze. She didn't know where she was. When she saw Ethan leaning over her babies, her body tensed. She pushed herself up, breathing hard. "Easy," Ethan said quickly, raising his hands. "You're safe here. No one's going to hurt you." Her eyes darted around the room, searching for danger. "Who are you?" she asked in a hoarse voice. "Name's Ethan," he said gently. "Rescue pilot. I found you out there in the storm. You almost didn't make it." Lyra's hands shook as she touched her daughters. "My children," she whispered, checking their tiny faces. Relief washed over her when she saw them breathing. "They live." "They're strong," Ethan replied with a small smile. "But you need rest. You lost a lot of strength out there." She looked at him with suspicion. "Why, help me?" "My kind. Don't trust humans." Ethan shrugged, setting a pot of hot water on the stove. "Maybe that's your kind's problem," he said. "I don't care what species someone is. If they're freezing to death, I help them." Lyra stared at him quietly, unsure how to respond. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not even her own people. Ethan poured a mug of steaming water and offered it to her. She hesitated before taking it, sipping slowly. The warmth made her hands tremble. "Where am I?" she asked. "Human Outpost, Sector 9, Ethan said, sitting across from her. "Old station I rebuilt after the war. Not much, but it keeps the cold out." Lyra nodded weakly, her eyes softening as she looked at her babies again. "My people will come," she whispered. "They will not stop. They want the twins." Ethan frowned. "Why would anyone want to hurt babies?" Her voice trembled. "They are not like others. Born under the twin moons, it is forbidden. They think they bring misfortune. The elders sent hunters to erase the shame." Ethan clenched his jaw. "That's not misfortune," he said. "That's fear, and fear makes people cruel." Lyra looked at him with quiet surprise. He spoke with a warmth she had never known, a kind of strength that didn't come from power but from kindness. Hours passed. Ethan cooked a small meal, using what little food he had. Lyra tried to help, but she was still too weak. The babies whimpered softly, and Ethan smiled as he improvised bottles from his medical kit. Lyra watched as this strange human who had no reason to care carefully fed her daughters. "They like you," she said softly. Ethan chuckled. "Guess I still remember how to hold a baby. My sister had twins years ago before the colony fell." Lyra tilted her head. "She gone?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, lost her during the outbreak. After that, I kept flying alone." Silence filled the room, the only sound the soft crackling of the fire. Lyra's eyes lowered. "Then, why still help strangers?" "Because I couldn't help her," he said simply. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Outside, snow drifted quietly against the window. Later that night, as Lyra and her babies slept, Ethan sat by the console, checking his scanners. He felt something uneasy in the pit of his stomach. The radar flickered again, same faint signal he'd seen earlier, following him since the rescue. He zoomed in. Multiple life signs moving fast through the snow, too organized to be animals. Ethan's blood ran cold. "They found us," he whispered. He powered down external lights and shut the heat dampers to hide their energy trail. Then he grabbed his old plasma rifle and checked the charge. The last thing he wanted was another war, but if they came for her and those babies, they'd have to go through him first. He looked one last time at Lyra, sleeping peacefully with her daughters. The firelight danced softly over their faces, painting them in gold. Ethan tightened his grip on the rifle, eyes hard. "Not tonight," he muttered. "No one's taking them tonight." Outside, far beyond the snow hills, glowing eyes moved closer, silent, steady, and deadly. The hunters had found the scent again, and the night was only beginning. The next morning came with an eerie calm. The storm had stopped, but the silence that followed felt heavier than before. Ethan stepped outside the shelter, his boots crunching on the frozen snow. The air was sharp and still. He scanned the horizon, nothing but endless white. Yet he knew something was wrong. Inside, Lyra was awake, feeding her twin daughters. Their tiny fingers glowed faintly, tracing light patterns in the air. She smiled softly, her alien features calm for the first time in days. But when she noticed Ethan's tense look through the window, her smile faded. "You feel it too," she whispered. Ethan turned, surprised. "Feel what?" "The eyes," she said quietly. "They are near. The hunters." Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't want to scare her, but she was right. His motion sensors had picked up faint movement again, too consistent to be the wind. "I've been picking up signals since last night," he admitted. "Could be animals, but I don't think so." Lyra's hands trembled as she pulled her babies close. "They will not stop until I am dead," she said. "Until the twins are gone. My people believe the curse must be erased." Ethan grabbed his plasma rifle and checked its charge. "Then they'll have to go through me." Lyra looked at him with wide eyes. "You don't understand. They are not men. They are trained to hunt mothers like me." He gave a faint grin. "Then it's a fair fight. I'm trained to protect." Before she could reply, the shelter's sensors beeped. The radar showed 3 heat signatures approaching from the north ridge. Fast, straight, and deliberate. "They found us," Ethan muttered. He shut off the lights and motioned for Lyra to stay low. The babies whimpered softly, sensing her fear. Ethan peeked through the frosted window. 3 tall figures moved between the snow dunes, their armor gleaming like ice. Each carried a plasma spear that glowed blue in the dark. Lyra whispered, "That is the marked clan. My clan." Her voice shook. "Their leader, Korak. He was once my mate." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "The one who abandoned you?" She nodded slowly, shame clouding her face. "He said I brought shame to his bloodline. He cast me out to die." Ethan clenched his fists. "Then it's time he learns what shame really looks like." He moved quickly, securing the shelter doors and activating the external defense turrets. Old, but still functional. The hum of charging energy filled the air. Lyra watched him with growing worry. "You can't fight them alone," she said. "I'm not," Ethan replied, loading another plasma cell. "I've got you and those 2 little miracles." The first shot came like lightning. A plasma spear struck the wall, melting metal and snow in an instant. The twins cried, startled by the explosion. Lyra covered them, trembling. Ethan crouched by the window, returning fire. Blue bolts cracked through the air, lighting the snow like flashes of day. The hunters roared in their native tongue, spreading out. One of them charged toward the entrance, moving with inhuman speed. Ethan waited until the last second before pulling the trigger. The blast hit dead center, throwing the alien backward into the snow. But the victory was short. 2 more shapes appeared on the ridge, firing down at the shelter. Sparks flew from the roof. Ethan ducked as a beam scorched past his shoulder, burning a hole in the wall. Lyra screamed as debris fell around them. Ethan turned, grabbing her hand. "Take the twins! Get to the back hatch!" She hesitated, tears in her eyes. "You will die if you stay." He gave a crooked smile. "I've died before, just not twice in one day." He kicked open the emergency panel, revealing a tunnel that led deep into the mountain. "Go!" he shouted. Lyra ran, clutching her daughters, their soft cries echoing through the passage. She looked back one last time and saw Ethan standing in the doorway, rifle blazing against the snowstorm of fire. Outside, Korak raised his weapon, shouting in fury. "The human protects the cursed. Then the human dies with them." Ethan fired back, voice hard as steel. "You'll have to try harder than that." The battle raged for minutes that felt like hours. The snow turned black with smoke and scorch marks. When silence finally fell, Ethan leaned against the doorway, breathing hard. 2 hunters lay still in the snow. The third had vanished into the fog. He winced as blood dripped from his arm. "They'll come back," he muttered. "With more." Lyra crawled back from the tunnel, tears streaming down her face. She touched his wound, glowing faintly with her healing light. "You saved us again," she whispered. Ethan met her eyes, tired but steady. "We're not safe yet," he said. Outside, the wind began to rise again. Far beyond the hills, lights flickered. More hunters, more ships. Closing in, the snow had turned red that night, and the war for 2 tiny lives had just begun. The following days were quiet, but the silence was fragile, like glass ready to shatter. Ethan's outpost was half ruined from the last attack. Smoke had frozen on the roof, and the smell of burnt metal lingered in the air. He spent hours repairing what he could, his hands numb from the cold, his mind restless with worry. Lyra stayed inside, caring for her newborn twins. The little ones had grown stronger, eyes glowing softly, voices light as snowflakes. Sometimes when they laughed, the air shimmered faintly like light dancing through glass. Ethan noticed it but said nothing. He didn't want to frighten her, That night, he brought in firewood and sat by the hearth. Lyra looked up from the babies. Her once sharp eyes were softer now, watching him as he worked. "You could have left me," she said suddenly. "You could have let the storm take me. Yet you stayed." Ethan smiled faintly, not looking up. "Yeah, well, it didn't feel right. Couldn't just fly away and pretend I didn't hear those cries." She tilted her head. "Humans are strange," he chuckled. "You're telling me that now?" Lyra gave a small smile, the first real one since he met her. "Where I come from," she said softly. "Humans are stories told to scare children. They say you burn worlds and steal stars." Ethan glanced at her, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Burn worlds? Steal stars? That's one way to make us sound impressive." Her smile faded. "They also say humans feel no mercy." He met her gaze, serious now. "Then they don't know us at all." The fire crackled between them. For the first time, Lyra believed that maybe those stories were lies. This human, with his quiet strength and tired eyes, had risked everything for her children. There was no cruelty in him, only warmth. Later that evening, Ethan was cleaning his weapon when he heard soft crying. One of the twins was awake, her small body glowing faintly in the dark. Lyra tried to calm her, but the baby's cries grew louder, the glow brighter. "Here," Ethan said gently, walking over. "Let me try." Lyra hesitated, but handed the baby over. Ethan held her carefully, rocking her slowly. Hey, it's okay. You're safe." To Lyra's surprise, the crying stopped almost instantly. The baby blinked up at Ethan, curious. The glow dimmed back to a faint shimmer. "She listens to you," Lyra whispered, almost in awe. Ethan smiled. "Guess she knows a friendly voice when she hears one." Lyra looked at him then, really looked. His human features were rugged, his hair messy, his hands rough from years of work, but his eyes were calm, kind. "You are not like others," she said softly. "Neither are you," he replied. Silence filled the space between them, but it was a peaceful silence this time. Over the next few days, they worked together to rebuild the shelter. Lyra helped as much as her strength allowed, using her strange alien touch to mend damaged circuits. When her hand brushed a broken wire, light traveled along her skin, sealing the metal as if it obeyed her will. Ethan watched, amazed. "You can do that?" She nodded. "It is part of my kind. We shape energy, but it weakens us." "Still," he said, smiling, "that's one hell of a talent." The twins cooed nearby, bundled in warm blankets. Lyra paused, staring at them lovingly. "They are not supposed to exist," she whispered. "Yet they live." Ethan knelt beside her. "Maybe they were meant to. Maybe they'll change the way your people think." She turned to him. "You believe that?" He looked back at the fire, thoughtful. "I've seen whole planets change because of one act of kindness." "Yeah, I believe it." Outside, the snowstorm softened into quiet flakes. For the first time in weeks, Lyra felt warmth not just from the fire, but from hope. But the peace did not last long. That night, while Ethan checked the perimeter scanners, he noticed something strange. The readings showed small tremors under the ground, like vibrations pulsing from the mountain itself. He looked toward the twins, who were sleeping soundly. Each time one of them moved, the scanner flickered again. He frowned. "That's impossible." Lyra noticed his expression. "What is it?" "Your kids," Ethan said slowly. "They're affecting the sensors." Lyra's eyes widened. She looked at her daughters, whose tiny hands glowed softly even in sleep. "Their power is growing faster than I thought." Ethan leaned closer. "Is that dangerous?" She hesitated, her voice trembling. "If the hunters sense this energy, they will come again." But not just hunters this time. He felt a chill crawl down his spine. "Who then?" Lyra looked toward the window, her reflection shimmering in the frost. "The elders. And when they come, they will not stop until all of us are gone." Ethan stared out into the cold darkness, the wind howling faintly beyond the glass. His grip tightened on his rifle. He didn't know what kind of ancient powers he had just invited into his life, but one thing he did know: he wasn't going to lose them. Not Lyra, not the twins, not after everything. And somewhere deep beneath the mountain, the snow trembled once more, as if the world itself was waiting for what came next. The next morning brought strange stillness again. The mountain was quiet, almost too quiet, and the cold bit sharper than usual. Ethan stepped out to check the perimeter sensors while the sun rose pale over the frozen peaks. He squinted at the display screen. No movement, no signs of life. but something inside him whispered that the calm wasn't real. It felt wrong. Inside, Lyra sat by the fire, her babies resting in her arms. Their tiny faces glowed softly, breathing peacefully. She hummed a low alien lullaby, a sound so gentle it made even the silence outside feel alive. Ethan paused for a moment, listening, before returning to fix the comms antenna. He needed to send a distress signal to the nearest human relay. If he could get word out, maybe someone would come before the next attack. But the transmitter was old, and the mountain storms blocked most frequencies. He cursed under his breath and tried again. A sudden crackle broke through the static. A voice, rough, faint, but human. Outpost 9. Do you copy? Ethan's eyes widened. Yes, this is Outpost 9. Ethan Cole responding. Copy that, the voice said, clearer now. I'm a trader passing nearby. Picked up your signal. Need supplies? I've got fuel and rations. Ethan hesitated. A trader out here? It was rare, almost impossible, but he was desperate. Yeah, he replied. Bring what you can. I'll trade salvage parts. Roger that, came the reply. See you soon, friend. Hours later, a small hovercraft appeared through the snow haze. The trader was an older man with a heavy coat and a warm grin. Ethan Cole, huh? Been a while since I met another human this far from the core. Ethan smiled cautiously, shaking his hand. You and me both. They shared a brief meal inside, drinking hot broth by the fire. Lyra stayed hidden in the next room, clutching her daughters close. She didn't trust strangers, especially humans. The trader noticed Ethan glancing toward the room now and then. You got company? He asked casually. Rescue case, Ethan said shortly. Mother and kids. Not from around here. The man nodded, but his eyes flickered with curiosity. That so? He leaned closer. You always had a soft spot, Cole. Still trying to save the galaxy one person at a time? Ethan smirked. Someone's got to try. When the trader left, Ethan felt a little more hopeful. He had fuel again, rations for a week, and the thought of another human voice lifted his spirits. He didn't know that as soon as the trader's ship disappeared into the sky, a second transmission was sent, encrypted and cold. Confirmed. Target located. Sending coordinates. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. Her instincts screamed danger. She walked to the window, watching the snow drift under the twin moons. The babies stirred in their cradle, their faint glow reflecting on the frosted glass. Ethan sat nearby, half asleep in his chair, rifle within reach. You should rest, he murmured without opening his eyes. I feel something, Lyra whispered. Something wrong, he frowned. Still the hunters? She shook her head. Worse, someone called them. Ethan's eyes snapped open. What? Before she could explain, the alarm blared. The scanners lit up red, multiple life forms approaching fast. Too many, too coordinated. Ethan's stomach dropped. No, he muttered. Not again. He rushed to the console. The radar showed a full strike team, 6 ships descending through the storm. He saw the call signature. It was the same frequency as the trader's vessel. Damn it, he hissed. He sold us out. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. I told you. Mercy is seen as weakness in this galaxy. Ethan grabbed his rifle, checking the charge. Maybe, but I'm not changing who I am. He ran to the back room and opened the hidden escape hatch. Take the twins, he ordered. Head into the tunnels. I'll hold them off. Lyra caught his arm, shaking her head. You'll die. Better me than them. The roar of engines filled the air. The snow outside turned to fire as the hunters' ships landed. Plasma light lit up the mountainside. Shadows of armored figures moved fast toward the shelter. Ethan turned, eyes calm but fierce. Go, don't look back, Lyra's voice broke. Why do you do this for me? You owe me nothing. He smiled softly. Because you and those kids deserve a chance. And I don't walk away from people who need one. She wanted to say more, but he was already moving, closing the hatch behind her, sealing her and the twins in darkness. Ethan stepped outside into the freezing air. Snow whipped around him as he faced the first wave of hunters. Their leader, Korak, stood at the front, his armor glowing red in the moonlight. You again, Korak growled. The human fool. Ethan raised his rifle. You want them, you'll have to go through me. Korak's grin was cruel. Gladly. The first plasma bolt hit, exploding near Ethan's boots. He rolled aside, firing back, his shots cutting through the storm. The night lit up with blue fire and thunder. Inside the tunnel, Lyra clutched her daughters close, tears falling silently. The earth shook above them. the sound of battle echoing through the stone. Then came a flash so bright it burned through the tunnel walls, followed by silence. Lyra's heart stopped. "Ethan," she whispered. But there was no answer. Only the cold wind outside and the faint cry of her twin daughters. Glowing softly in the dark, somewhere above, the storm began to rise again, carrying the scent of smoke, metal, and loss. The world outside the mountain burned blue that night. Fire streaked through the sky as alien dropships tore through the clouds, their engines screaming like thunder. Ethan Cole stood at the edge of his ruined shelter, armor cracked, rifle gripped tight. His breath rose in the cold air, steady, calm, unafraid. He could see their shapes now, dozens of armored hunters marching through the snow, weapons glowing. At their center stood Korak, his massive form wrapped in glistening red steel. Behind him, banners of the marked clan flapped in the storm. The mountain trembled beneath their steps. Ethan raised his rifle and whispered, "Come on then." The first shot tore through the silence. Energy beams flashed across the white plain, melting snow and lighting up the sky. Ethan moved fast, firing from cover to cover, every shot precise. His pulse burned, his mind sharp, every instinct alive. He wasn't fighting for survival anymore. He was fighting for something worth dying for. Inside the tunnels, Lyra clutched her daughters close, trembling at the echoes of the explosions above. Dust fell from the ceiling. The twins whimpered softly, their skin beginning to glow again. Lyra pressed her forehead against theirs and whispered, "Please don't cry. He's out there for you. Be strong, my stars." The glow brightened, pulses of light that matched her heartbeat. The baby's tiny hands shimmered, sending faint waves of energy across the walls. Lyra gasped as the ground itself hummed beneath her knees. Above, Ethan was thrown backward by a blast. His shoulder armor cracked. Pain shot down his arm. He coughed blood but forced himself up. He spotted Korak through the smoke, massive, roaring, advancing like a beast. "You should have stayed out of our war, human." Korak shouted. Ethan spat blood, grinning. "And you should have stayed in your cave." Korak roared and charged. Their weapons clashed, light and fire colliding. Ethan rolled aside, grabbed his plasma blade, and slashed across Korak's chest, sparks flying. But the alien's armor absorbed the hit. Korak struck back, knocking Ethan hard into the snow. "You protect the cursed," Korak snarled, pressing a blade to his throat. "You think they're worth dying for?" Ethan's eyes burned with defiance. "They're worth living for." Before Korak could strike, the ground erupted beneath them. A brilliant blue light shot up from the mountain, blinding everyone. The air rippled like heat waves, and the hunters screamed as their weapons overloaded. Lyra staggered from the tunnel, her eyes glowing bright as the twins floated gently in her arms, wrapped in a halo of light. Her voice was calm but thunderous. "You will not harm them again," Korak froze. "Lyra, what have you done?" The snow around her rose like mist, swirling with energy. The twins' marks burned with golden light, sending shockwaves that cracked the ground. The hunters tried to fire, but their weapons shattered in their hands. Ethan watched in stunned silence as the storm itself began to obey her. Lightning coiled around her arms, striking the enemy ranks. Korak fell to one knee, his armor melting under the heat. "This power," he gasped. "It should not exist." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "Then why does it feel like mercy?" With one final cry, she raised her hand and the storm exploded outward. A wave of light swept through the mountain, knocking every hunter off their feet. Ships in the sky lost control and spiraled into the clouds. The snow glowed like fire, then fell still. Silence. Ethan stumbled toward her, the snow steaming around his boots. Lyra collapsed to her knees, trembling, her strength fading fast. The babies had stopped glowing, sleeping peacefully against her chest. He caught her before she fell. Hey, stay with me," he said, his voice breaking. "You did it. They're gone." Lyra's hand brushed his face, her touch soft and warm. "I couldn't have done it. Without you." "You're gonna be okay," he whispered, though he didn't know if it was true. She smiled faintly. "Now I understand why they feared humans. It was never your weapons. It was your heart." Ethan laughed weakly, holding her close as the snow began to fall again. "Guess we're not so scary after all." The mountain was quiet once more. No engines, no screams. Only the wind carrying the whisper of survival. Lyra rested against his chest, breathing softly. The twins stirred in her arms, one reaching out, touching Ethan's wrist with a tiny glowing hand. The light spread through him like warmth, healing his wounds. melting the ice from his armor. He looked at the sky, the twin moon shining bright above, and for the first time in years, Ethan Cole smiled. The storm was over. But something greater had begun, for in that frozen world, a human and an alien mother had defied the galaxy's cruelty, and together, they had rewritten what it meant to be alive. Weeks passed after the storm that ended the battle. The snow-covered valley had gone quiet again, blanketed in peace rather than fear. Ethan's shelter stood half-broken but still alive like its owner. Smoke drifted softly from the chimney, rising into a sky painted with twin suns. The war was over, but its echoes still whispered through the frozen wind. Ethan sat near the fire, his shoulder wrapped in bandages. The warmth of the flames made him sleepy, but the small laughter nearby kept him awake. Lyra's twin daughters, now healthier, stronger, glowing softly with that strange energy, played with the corner of his jacket, pulling and giggling. Their laughter filled the cabin like sunlight. He smiled. "You two are trouble," he said gently. "Your mom's got her hands full." Lyra chuckled softly from across the room. Her wounds had healed, though her eyes carried a quiet depth, the kind that only comes after surviving too much. "They like you," she said, folding a blanket. "Maybe too much." Ethan looked up at her. "Can't blame them. I've got that charm." She rolled her eyes, but there was warmth behind her teasing. Charm or foolishness? "I can never tell which one kept you alive." "Bit of both," he replied with a grin. Outside, the snow sparkled beneath the sunlight. It was hard to believe this place had once been a battlefield. The wreckage of alien ships still dotted the landscape, half buried in white, their black metal melting into memory. The marked clan had fled, their leader Korak left behind, defeated but alive, dragged away by his own broken soldiers. Word of the event spread quickly across the colonies. First as rumor, then as legend. They called it the Night of the Human Stand. Some said one human had faced 100 warriors to protect a mother and her children. Others said the storm itself had fought for him. No one knew the truth, but Lyra did. That night she stood outside the shelter watching the horizon. "They'll come again one day," she said quietly. "Not for me, but for them." Ethan joined her, hands in his pockets. "Then we'll be ready," he said. She turned to look at him, her expression unreadable. "You could leave, you know. Go back to your world. There's nothing holding you here." He looked at her and smiled. "You really think I could walk away from you three? After all this?" Lyra's gaze softened, but she said nothing. The wind carried her hair like silver threads, and for a brief moment the two of them stood in silence, just listening to the sound of life returning to the mountain. That evening, Ethan repaired his old transmitter again. He tried to send another message to the human network, this time with new coordinates and a report. He didn't mention Lyra's name or the twins' abilities. He only said survivors found. Mission successful. Returning soon. When he looked back at Lyra, she was sitting by the fire, humming the same lullaby she had sung the night he found her. The babies were asleep beside her, glowing faintly in rhythm with her song. He smiled. "You know, one day people are going to tell stories about this." Lyra looked up. "Stories?" "Yeah," he said. "About a mother who fought the storm. About her children who made the mountains sing, and maybe about a stubborn human who didn't know when to quit." She laughed softly. "And who would believe such a tale?" He leaned back in his chair, eyes half closed. "Doesn't matter if they believe it. What matters is that it happened." Outside, the wind shifted, carrying distant sounds like voices. A group of colonists had arrived at the base of the mountain, following Ethan's signal. They stood in awe at the sight of the ruined battlefield, the melted ice and the strange glowing trails that still lingered in the snow. They didn't find the human or the alien mother, only 3 footprints leading into the deep forest and a small hand-carved sign stuck into the snow that read, "Peace lives here. Don't disturb it." Years later, travelers would speak of a hidden valley where the snow never melted, where strange blue lights danced under the moon and laughter echoed between the mountains. They called it the Sanctuary of the Snow Twins. Some said a human lived there still, guarding it. Others said he left, but his promise remained, written into the very air. No one left behind, and when the twin moons rose each night, their light touched the mountain peak just right, forming the image of a man and a woman standing side by side, holding 2 small glowing children, forever etched into the frozen stone. It became a legend told across the stars, the tale of a human who fought not for power or glory, but for compassion. And somewhere in the heart of that cold world, two little girls laughed under the aurora sky, their eyes bright, their future wide open, because one human refused to walk away.